February. The January 23rd, 2023 Bridgewater Finance Committee meeting at 7:32 p.m. And our first order of business is approval of meeting minutes. So I hope everybody had a chance to take a quick look. First ones are December 14th minutes. Anybody have questions, comments, motion?
Motion to approve?
Thank you, MJ.
Second.
Thank you, Julie.
Welcome.
We usually do a roll call, Michael. Are you doing that, or am I doing it?
Man. I can do it. Let me just get a clean piece of paper.
All right.
All right.
I thought this was what Debbie said.
Eric,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
going too fast for myself. MJ
Aye.
and Rig. Oh,
Aye.
and Julie.
Julie.
Julie, are you good?
Aye.
Okay,
Oh,
there you go.
All right, so moving on. Thank
I got
you, everyone. That passed in unanimously. Second, so January 4th, 2023 meeting minutes. Questions, comments, additions, subtractions?
Motion to approve?
Thank you, MJ. You got a second?
Second, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Mr. Dutton, if you please.
Sure. Eric,
Aye.
Chris.
Abstain.
Okay, abstained. Nate.
Abstain, I wasn't present.
Okay, MJ.
Aye.
Okay, Rig.
I don't believe I was present in that meeting. I understand as well. That's
Okay.
December 4th, right?
No, January 4th.
January 4th. You're on,
Oh.
yeah.
You were there, Rick.
Oh, January 4th. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Where am I thinking December? Sorry. Yes.
All right, and Julie.
Aye.
Very good.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on, our next order of business is public comments. If we do have any public comment this evening, I ask if you state your name and your street address for the record. Do you have any public comments? Okay, not hearing any public comments. Going once, going twice, 3 times. Okay, we will move on to our first order of business. FY 23-040 certified assessors compensation. Mr. Dutton, if you could give us maybe a little background.
Sure. One of the provisions in Mass General Law allows for a bump in pay if the town accepts the provisions of Chapter 59, Section 21A.5 for assessors, for the chief assessor having achieved certain levels of certification, and happy to report our assessor is one of the most decorated, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, one of the most decorated or certified assessors in the state, and so we would like to make sure that we can reward that extra study and the extra efforts that go into the certifications there. So that's what this is.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Dutton, any comments, thoughts?
So is there a dollar amount on this somewhere that I'm missing, or is it a,
No, it can, Julie, it can be an adjustment up to 10%, in compensation. And quite honestly, that additional compensation would put our assessor just about where she should be according to our compensation and classification plan.
compensation classification plan for what, like the category that their department that they're in, or compared to other communities, or?
No, well, a little of both, actually. So we have a compensation and classification plan that puts all our employees into a grade level and a step level. And so she is at the low end of her grade and step. This would put her more towards the middle of that grade schedule, if that makes sense.
And how
So-
does she know, how does that position normally, I mean, how long has the person been in the position and how often do they get I guess, do they typically get there? You know what I mean? If you're honest, like you get hired and you're in a step and in a grid, when the following year you move up to the following step
Correct.
type of thing?
Yep, correct. So Shelley's been with us, I believe, 20 years. And so she has, over the years, received some bumps based on certifications, but this is obviously the biggest bump, but it would put her, so last time we did a classification compensation survey, I think was in 2014. And so since then, we've made adjustments to that scale based upon a whole host of things. One of them, as you mentioned, was the survey of other cities and towns, comparable cities and towns. So we've adjusted the scale based on that. So over the last few years, we've had significant, changes. I think everybody knows it's been a very bizarre set of circumstances in the economy that have led to, significant increases in some positions, not others. So in order for us to remain market competitive, we have made adjustments over the years to the grades and the step levels. So this would essentially get her in conformance with the adjustments that we've made to the step and grade schedules.
Is there like a maximum? You said it'll put the person in the middle. So if she happens to leave, whatever, within so many years, would the next person come in based on their experience, or would they come in lower or higher? We don't know, right?
So that's a good question. So if for some reason, and I hope she doesn't, if Shelley left tomorrow, then.
Oh, she's been in it for 20 years. You can't have her forever. I can't imagine, but you never know.
Sure,
Go ahead.
sure. That's what I'm hoping. It's one of the most difficult jobs that's nobody really understands what the assessor does, but it is one of the most difficult jobs in town. But regardless of that, so if somebody came in, this would mean if somebody came in with the same certification that Shelley has, and I can tell you that there are very few of those folks statewide, but if somebody did come in with that same certification, then they would be eligible for this particular pay. If somebody came in without this certification and had to work for it or chose not to get it, they would not be eligible for what's in front of you tonight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit hesitant, nervous, concerned, what I'm not sure what the word is, like with like the town clerk position, for instance. She came in at less, and then later on, it was like, hey, I should make as much as other people in the town. I just don't know if we're setting ourselves up for the same, she made a lot less than Mr. Adams, right? And then there was some talk about maybe increasing her salary, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And I don't know if we're falling into the same scenario
Right.
here.
So again, that's a very good question. It's a little different because the clerk's position is the only elected full-time paid position that we have in town. And so because of that, the council sets the clerk's rate of pay. That's not something that I set or that we set internally. So there wouldn't, nobody in town, with the exception of the clerk, has the ability to go to the council and say, hey, I think I need more money, or, I want an increase. Those conversations happen at my level. And in the case of the clerk can lobby and advocate for an increase in pay in front of the council, not in front of me. So it is a little different. It's a lot different, actually. And
Okay.
so every year, the only way the clerk can get an increase is to go to the council and get a council vote. for an increase. But in this case, we are pretty, in fact, it's been the matter of a lot of conversation over the last few months, I'd say. You know, we are trying to get everybody streamlined so that we know exactly what each person is going to make this year, next year, the year after, and so on. So there's no guessing about it. So.
Okay.
And Michael, from what I hear you saying, based on her experience and based on her qualifications and certifications, that this will bring her pay in line with what her peers make across the Commonwealth in general.
Exactly.
correct?
Exactly.
All right.
I have a follow-up question. I share similar sentiment. This will, this will eventually reset the market. While I totally understand that the goal is to get her aligned with her peers, I guess I'm just wondering, who are we benchmarking ourselves with? And I realize, obviously Newton, are we benchmarking ourselves with Newton, or what towns are we benchmarking ourselves with? Because it's the tax implication, the funds that are coming in are vastly different town to town. So for me, resetting the market to align, someone's pay across the board with her peers is not apples to apples. So I'm just trying to better understand more.
So
Well said.
Yep, no, that is well said. So the benchmarking is both external and internal. So when we do a classification and compensation study, you look at classifications of employees and you place them in certain grades depending upon their responsibilities and authorities, and their supervisory, the numbers of folks they supervise, a whole host of different factors that play into a classification. So right now, say, and I'll pick a grade because I can't remember where she lies, but say grade 13 may have 10 different employees in that particular grade, and there's a salary range, a step progression that starts at one figure, ends at another figure, and everybody within that grade is set on a certain step. And as Julie pointed out, each year you go up a step. Right now the differences in the steps are 2.5%. So
I'm sorry.
no,
Please
go ahead.
continue.
Well, so
No,
I was
please
going to say,
continue.
so there's an internal equity piece that we look at, and then we sort of do that analysis, and then we gauge that against sort of external equities and external in our peer group. And the peer group, no, is definitely not, the Newtons, the Brooklines, and so forth. The peer groups, are all the area towns around us, Middleborough. I think we did use Halifax finally, West Bridgewater, East Bridgewater. And then we also looked at some of the larger towns, because those are all smaller towns, the ones that surround us. Rainham was another peer, but we went out to a few larger ones. I think Dartmouth was a comparable, and I'm trying to remember the other ones, but that gives you an idea of what we were looking at in terms of comparables, Ray.
Okay, and these are peer groups that are, the town's income, the revenue that's coming into the town are similar to ours with respect to real estate taxes and all the other taxes and whatever else, line items that make up revenue for the town. Am I hearing that correctly?
I would say sort of off the top of my head, yes. It's very hard to start trying to make those comparisons because you probably heard me say before, we operate Bridgewater on a lower cost per capita than almost a dozen different cities and towns in the state, and those are mostly in the western part of the state. So we are very lean, and our tax revenue overall is very lean. The amount of tax paid per household is right in there, and that's because we have less commercial base than most of our peer groups, so that even though we spend less than our peer group, our cost per property is roughly in line with all the other towns around us and our peer group. So, it is a very difficult, it is a difficult analysis, but that's essentially, where we are. It's roughly, taxes paid per household. We're right in that mix.
Okay, I just have a couple more questions. I don't mean to monopolize it. The follow-up questions are, has this individual been receiving, regular increases? I think I might have heard yes, but those regular increases are, cost of living, annual raises. Can you just highlight that? And then I think the last question is, this will eventually not only reset the market for Bridgewater for this role, and obviously experience comes in, this will also, how does this impact the residents? Should this person retires, is this person eligible for, or anybody in this role, is he or she eligible for sort of post-retirement compensation?
I'll answer the second question first. So yes, every employee that has 10 years into the retirement system, the Plymouth County retirement system, has is eligible for some type of pension, and your pension is determined based upon your years of service and your age. So when your years of service and your age max out, then you max out your pension. I don't know, other than she's been with us for 20 years. I don't know how many years. I think that's probably per years of service. And I would never ask her age. So I'm not sure what her age is, but your short answer to your question is she would be eligible. That's essentially not an obligation that the town has to worry about paying, because that's paid through the Plymouth County retirement system, to which we contribute some money, and then the employee contributes up to 11% of gross to that system. So that's how her post employment would be, her retirement would be paid. Your first question, does she receive regular? She has received regular increases, and over a period of years, and it's just the small step amounts that she would get. So that's that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dutton. Good questions. Thank you, Rig. I appreciate them all. Does anybody else have any questions, comments?
Yeah, it's Julie again. So the longer someone stays in a position, the less likely they are to fit with the market, right? Because, I don't know, like when I was in accounting, I made the same money as someone that'd been in the same position for 8 years because, the way the market works, but that doesn't mean they bumped up the other person in private industry anyways. And and then the other question that was more of a comment, but my question would be like, and who's paying for these classes and these certifications? Are they paying themselves, or is that something that we, like, if she continues to get them, or this person, this role, are we paying for the classes and the certifications as well? And do we continue to do so? And then is it kind of a double-edged sword, kind of like the school district where, they had masters and then they had masters plus continuing it, you know what I mean? And you had column after column, and we were asked by the town to take them out, and we did.
Well, so we do. So I can tell you, I'm a big proponent of educated employees. I think that the taxpayer benefits from an educated workforce, and I think it allows, the more educated our workforce, essentially the leaner we can run. And so I always encourage people. We certainly take advantage. I can tell you, we take enormous advantage of free education at Bridgewater State University. We do have built into some of our collective bargaining agreements, AFSCME in particular, which is our highway, sewer, water folks. We do have provisions in there that allow for us to pay for education, whether you're moving from a light equipment operator to a heavy equipment operator, and so forth. So So we do want to make sure that we're educating our workforce, because we want an educated workforce and we want a workforce that's going to stay with us over the long term and not jump around. So we've been, knock on wood, we've been somewhat successful in that regard. And we're looking at the education piece not as some reward. We're really looking at it as an opportunity for us to retain employees and commit to employees the same as we want them to commit to us. And in this economy and in this environment, I think we've done pretty well with that. So we will continue to try to encourage education, offer education where we can. Whether the town pays for the education or the employee pays for the education right now is, I would love for the town to pay all the education, but we're sort of, it depends, I guess, Julie, what the education is. In this case, I think, Shelley is taking it upon herself. I don't think these are expensive propositions. I think they're time consuming to get certification through the international assessors or the state assessors associations. I think it's mostly just study and time consuming. I don't think there's a huge cost involved. So I'm not sure specifically whether we pay for these or not, but I think that the end result is that we really want to make sure that we are incenting people to get certifications. And as I said, our current assessor is one of the most certified in the state, and that knowledge is priceless to us. So she's her knowledge base and her is just incredibly priceless to us throughout the course of the year.
So the up to 10%, who determines whether it's 8%, 10%?
We
And
would,
it's-
I would.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, anybody else? Any questions, comments, thoughts? All great questions. Thank you, everyone.
Nate, just,
Mr.
real-
Chairman?
Oh.
Oh, Eric, do you want to go first? Did you say something?
yeah, I just, real quick. Michael, I think I know where I'm going with this. But real quickly, as I understand it, this person is below the average. So if we were going to hire somebody new, if this individual was to leave, we probably, fair market value for others surrounding the town would be higher than the current salary. Am I correct in saying that? Do I understand that the right way?
I would say, obviously it's hard to know without actually going through that process, but I would say yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
MJ?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple comments, or at least one long string of comment. I think what we're reading and hearing tonight is something that's pretty fairly straightforward. And I'll speak from my experience as a public employee in the sector. Having been in the field for 16 years myself, it does kind of help when you're well compensated. From an employee's perspective, if you're not being, compensated for your position and for the stuff that you're working on, barring that, what incentive is there to stay in this particular field? I feel like we're getting to the point where we're debating
Pension.
something that is fairly straightforward. But yes, other than the pension, the fact that, if I'm doing a job for $65,000 a year and I have my certifications, I've put in my time, and I'm still $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 below what the general average. It's not so much resetting a market value. I get that component of it. I get that there is an overarching conceptualization of a market force, as it were. But when you're looking at it from the ground level, when you're looking at it as the employee, just again using my example as a public employee myself, when you're not receiving the compensation that that you should be making given your experience, but also the training and certifications you're working towards, it de-incentivizes you to continue in that particular municipality or in that particular agency. And when that happens, it's not just one person it affects. The cascade effect that can occur when this happens, and it happens in the schools, believe you me, turnover in some school systems is woefully, atrocious, given, some school districts can't compensate their teachers right. The same thing happens in the normal municipal side of things. And the less chance you have of compensating an employee for the work that they're doing, for the work they've done, and for the training they're getting, you basically de-incentivize people being in this field. And that happens in the teaching field as well. But for the normal municipal employees, it makes a big difference if you're making, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, heck, even 10,000 less than what you're supposed to be making. Because I'll tell you right now, in some places, the average could be $60,000, $75,000 for my position. I can tell you, full disclosure, what if I'm not making that? I'll go to another municipality. And that's sort of a similar situation that we have here in this case. We have the opportunity to allow the employee to not only be well compensated, but also show that she's not only valid in being our assessor, but also the work that she's done, she continues to do, and she keeps continuing to strive for those certifications. Otherwise, what incentive does Miss McCauley have to stay here in town? I've worked with Shelley. She's a great individual. She does a great job as an assessor. And frankly, I would like to see her be well compensated for what she's doing, especially if she's still being underpaid as an assessor that's certified by all these accreditations. It is almost an insult to the employee or employees in general when and I will not go much longer on this, Mr. Chairman, so forgive me. I can get a little wordy, but it worries me and concerns me when there is a lack of general acceptance that a municipal employee shouldn't be well compensated for what they're doing for their post. It makes it seem like we're the enemy. It makes it seem like we're just there, just collecting a paycheck when we're not. And the last thing we want to do is de-incentivize people being in the government field. On average, most town employees right now in this Commonwealth alone, you're looking at an age range of mid-50s, early 60s. Do you know what's going to happen in a couple of years? A lot of people are going to start retiring, and we want to make sure that people out there who might want to be interested in taking up this field, whether it's a collector, whether it's an assessor, whether it's a town manager even, we want to make sure they know that they will be well compensated for what they're doing, and it won't be a waste of their time. So in my personal opinion on this, Mr. Chairman, and the committee can take this for what it's worth, you can throw it in the barrel if you want, but as far as I'm concerned, this is a straightforward proposal that allows us to keep someone who has been there, who has the bureaucratic knowledge, to help us keep our assessor office running and to keep the town able to bill out people the appropriate amount when it comes to tax time. And I yield back my time, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Hold on one second.
I just want to respond if that's okay, please, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
yep.
Thank you so much. I would say, absolutely well said, MJ. I personally don't disagree with everything you've just said. However, in the spirit of the conversation and wanting to better understand, we have a fiduciary responsibility to sort of balance things out with respect to, the questions that were asked. In my opinion, I think those questions are fair. We need to fully understand, where is this money coming from, right? And we need to understand, does this, not just for this individual, but for any town worker, right? We need to understand, can Bridgewater afford it, right? Are we benchmarking ourselves with other communities that are not aligned with Bridgewater, the income that Bridgewater brings in, the revenues that Bridgewater brings in? Because at the end of the day, there's almost 29,000, 30,000, give or take, other individuals, who would want to know these questions. While I make this statement, I also agree with your disposition in terms of, compensating individuals, particularly individuals that are highly motivated, to get their education, individuals that puts in the time. We certainly don't want to be, a town that discourage individuals for opportunities, future individuals for coming to work for Bridgewater. But I think the questions that we did ask, I don't think those questions were invalid. I certainly do not think, that this was just a straightforward, let's just approve it. I think it was fair enough for us to ask and wanting to better understand, where does this puts us, in terms of resetting the market, in terms of, where's this money coming from? So I personally think the questions were fair and the concerns were fair. But, absolutely kudos to this individual for wanting to better herself. And certainly we appreciate her 20 years of service, and we hope that she retires, here at Bridgewater and not go elsewhere. But I felt it was really important for us to sort of understand everything that's on the table, because when it comes to money, it's not just straightforward. Someone's going to have to pay for it.
Yep. Okay. Thank you both. I think that you both made valid points, and I agree with you, Ray. All the questions, were appropriate as we dug for a little bit of knowledge. But MJ's right too. I don't think there's a lot of, we aren't going to be tripping over assessors out there. This is something that's pretty specialized too, and it sounds like that in order to bring our assessor into line with compensation to be properly paid. I get to your point, MJ. All right. Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Make a motion to accept, Chris.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
Second.
Second,
Okay. I think Rig was our second. Mr. Dutton, if you could just do a roll call for us, please.
All right. Eric,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
aye.
Rig,
Aye.
and Julie.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Good discussion there. And now moving on to our next item. It should be a little easier. FY 23-041, acceptance of non-recurring revenue to capital. This is our annual budget payment from the Department of Corrections, right, for the prison land. I guess the one question I'll lead off with is this higher or lower in line with what we've been receiving from them recently?
This is substantially lower than what we've received in past years, and essentially, we've looked at this. We've also reached out to the Department of Correction, but we haven't, I don't believe, Lori, we've gotten an answer yet. But we do know that this encompasses the COVID year. So during that year, there was a concerted effort by the DOC statewide to minimize the number of residents in the DOC facilities. So this, based upon population, this is our number. It's based upon two things: based upon the amount that the legislature actually funds in this line item in the DOC budget, and then also it's based on, once that number is established, then it's based upon a population formula for the various DOC facilities. So it is substantially less, but we should accept it. But obviously, we're looking to the DOC to answer exactly why it's so much less, and we're going to lobby for an increase over the course of the next couple months in the next year's budget.
All right, and I see, so it's going to go into the capital stabilization fund. And obviously, our state representative, Mr. D'Amelia, he is working for the town's interest to try to get these increased also.
Correct. He has, over the years, not so much this year, over the years, he has been able to provide us with supplemental budget funding for the DOC. We still hope we can see that, but this piece comes directly from the DOC's budget, and so it's obviously less, and we want to know why. So Angela will be certainly helping us get to the bottom of that.
All right, thank you. Questions, comments, thoughts? I mean, obviously we want the money, but the town wants the money.
Quick question.
Oh, go right ahead.
Michael, correct me if I'm wrong. We actually don't rely on this heavily during, I can't remember exactly how much we factor in for our budget. I know we're conservative with it because it's not always guaranteed. Can you just refresh my memory on what we used in the budget?
We as an estimate, we haven't calculated, well, I'm sorry, for the estimates, I don't think we use this at all, because we don't rely on any of this money for operating budget. We only rely on this money for capital stabilization. So for capital funding. So obviously it's less than it was. The capital funding is sort of a more, you know, a more variable revenue calculation than is our normal operating budget. So we don't use any of this for our normal operating budget. We use it all for capital stabilization.
Perfect, thank you.
I just have a quick question. This is just for my own FYI. Mike, you mentioned that it is substantially lower than before. Can you just tell me can you just tell us what substantially lower, less than means?
I think, Laurie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think last year our figure was in the high 200s or low 300s.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yep. So that's why I say significantly.
It was actually 390 something last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was going up and up and then it went down. So,
Yeah, it went down pretty steeply.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you both.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments, thoughts, questions?
Motion to approve?
All right, thank you, Rig.
Second.
To tie. Give it to Chris, I guess.
Yeah, give it to Chris.
There we go.
All right, I'll go backwards this time, the other way. So Julie,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and Eric.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on, FY 23-042 transfer order from the CPA Fund Old State Farm Trail Project. If you would just give us a quick background on this, please, Mr. Dutton. And
Sure.
maybe just a quick on how, you know, the CPA is different from our regular budget for some of the newer people.
Sure. So the community preservation, I'll start with that. So we fund community preservation with a 2% surcharge on your property taxes. It gets segregated for CP community preservation uses only. Community preservation uses include and are only historic preservation, open space and recreation, and community housing. So those three areas are the only things that community preservation funds can be appropriated for. And within community preservation funds, there are certain rules about funding. All of our total revenues have to be apportioned 10%. Essentially, we create buckets within the CPA funds. One is for open space recreation, one is for historic, and one is for housing. So within each of those buckets, we have to allocate 10% of our total revenues on an annual basis. Those allocations can grow. They don't close out at the end of the fiscal year. So you could end up with $1 million in one of those buckets or a couple of those buckets if you didn't spend any of the money out of them. The Community Preservation Committee is made up of representatives from I believe 8 different committees or 6 different committees plus one appointed member from the public at large. So that group hears all of the applications for community preservation money. The town can be an applicant. Any private resident can be an applicant. That's rare. And other organizations can also be an applicant. We just recently finished a project to preserve records at the Bridgewater. I can't remember what the name of the organization is, but it's the Bridgewater's Historic Society, essentially, and it's sort of the place that houses a lot of the history of the Bridgewaters. And we also did a portion of the memorial building was funded with community preservation, a portion of the renovations to the Congregational Church funded by community preservation. So you can get the sense that the funding can be used across the community, cannot be used for any reason other than those 3 that I mentioned and that have buckets created within the CPA to fund. So in this case, the Natural Resources Trust of Bridgewater worked through me and through my office to apply for funding to survey and record a trail easement on the Department of Correction property. And let me give you just a very quick history of how that came about. When the fire academy, the Bridgewater Fire Academy started, it was intended to be one of two new fire training facilities, the main one in the long time facility being in Stowe, Massachusetts, being the only one in the state. We now have two, and I believe there'll be another one out in the Springfield area very shortly. So the state's objective was to create three fire academies, one of them being in Bridgewater. So as part of a mitigation plan in the legislation that created and gave the property to the fire, gave some DOC property to the fire academy, the state legislature decided to mitigate whatever negative impact to Bridgewater there was by allowing us to have a trail easement on DOC property, sort of one end of Summer Street to the other, but it basically goes along the town river. And so the only catch to that was we could use that easement, but before we could use it, we had to cover the cost of survey, and we had to cover the cost of recording that easement with the Registry of Deeds. Now the DCAM, which is the state agency that's responsible for state properties, was the one that we had to work through, and they are the ones that are actually going out to bid for the survey. They've already done that. The low bid came in at $60,600, I believe it was. So that is the money. If we want the easement and we want to create the trail, that we need to pay DCAM in order for them to pay the contractor, the surveyor, to do the work. So so Natural Resources Trust of Bridgewater, Kitty Doherty and her folks came to me, said, look, we can raise about 15,000 of this, of what we need. It's actually ended up being a little more than that, but we will need a commitment from the town for 40,000. And mostly that was to make sure that we can not miss out on this year's grant cycle for the actual construction of the trail. So they needed 40,000 to be able to fulfill the commitment to DCAM to build to cover the cost of the survey, and they also needed DCAM to say yes, we've received that money, so that they could articulate that in the next application for actual trail building funds, which is due, I believe, February 1st. So that is sort of a quick history of this. So the Community Preservation Committee has recommended $40,000, and that's what's in front of you tonight. I don't know if I have a map. I could show you where the proposed trail is going to go if anybody is curious about that, but if anybody has questions.
I know it's going to end up right by the bridge on the Bridgewater side, and it's supposed to start out with the pavement. The new pavement ends, right?
Yep,
Maybe a
yep.
little further back, yeah, on Summer
Yep.
Street.
And it's also to include two parking areas, both well away from residential areas. So,
And this is an area that's already heavily used by outdoors people, whether it be hunters, dog walkers, people riding bikes, bird watchers, you name it. I spent quite a bit of time out there. There already are some old trails out there too. Essentially, they're old ATV or old four-wheel drive trails out there. It is a very pretty area. It's unique, and to have a regular access, I think, would be a benefit to the town. Green space always is.
yep. So there, I just put the map up so you can see it, but it follows, down here at the southern end, right off of parking lot right off of, I guess, what is that? Still Summer down there? I think it is.
Yeah, it's
That's what
summer
I
before it
thought.
goes over the bridge in the middle of
Yeah.
the road.
And follows the Taunton River.
That's the Taunton River, yeah.
Yep, and then goes up along the border, and then cuts through and back up, way up there. So it's, I believe, if I'm recollecting correctly, it's about a mile-long trail.
Yeah, it must be a little longer than maybe, but yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions, comments? So I'm assuming in the future that we'll maybe, I know that we'll try to mitigate money through the state and whatnot, but we'll probably see something from the CPA again in the future. On this one, or do you
That
think
is
we'll fund it?
possible. Nate, that is possible, but I think the goal of the NRTB is to fund the actual, after this is to fund the construction with state grants and private funding.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, quick question for you. That large parcel of what looks like plowed land to the northeast of most of the eastern part of that trail there, is that where Duxboro Estates was supposed to be built? Is that off of Curve Street? Is that near that?
Let me just go back.
I don't think so, MJ.
It looks like the upland that was near that part of Curve Street. I could swear it was that part.
Well, you know, behind that, those fields, yes. So what you can see behind that is where they've built some of that new subdevelopment out there, yeah. Yep.
Mm.
It does
Do-
abut that on the backside there,
Yeah,
but that's all. There's solar panel farms out there too, right? And
yeah.
I can tell you that Duxboro Estates has donated donated privately to fund I think the actual construction. And I know there's some discussion about trying to link, you know, some of that Duxboro property with the trail, these trails.
Yeah,
As
because
well.
I was thinking that, I was like, well, let's see, Duxboro Estates is down there, and if I remember correctly, Mr. Atani still owns that whole group of land. I would think that he might be interested in having part of his subdivision that he's building down there, maybe integrate into this new trail, which could be some sort of public-private partnership at that point to help out, get maybe some additional funds that we might not be able to get through the CPC if, you know, if this proposal did not pass this evening. It certainly sounds like something that we could try to talk to Mr. Atani about at some point, which I would be all for.
And I think some of those conversations have been had, but I haven't been privy to them just yet.
hey, thank you. Yeah, sounds like some ready-made trail maintainers there in Duxboro Estates then. All right, any other questions, comments?
So my only question was gonna be, and I think Michael already confirmed this, so we're in this is phase 2 part of the project, right? And we're looking at, 65,000, we're funding 40 of it out of the CPA. The other 2 phases are just under like 200,000, so we're thinking that's gonna be privately funded.
We are, well, state grant funded primarily, and also with the addition of some private funding. So I don't believe that the plan right now is not to come back to the Community Preservation Committee or the town for additional funding. I can't say that that's a definite, but I think that's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Not hearing anything, the chair will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Thank you,
Second,
MJ. Thank you, Rig.
All right, Julie,
I,
Rig,
aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and Eric.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving right along here. FY 23-043 Bridgewater Rainham Regional School District Capital Allocation. Mr. Dutton.
All right, so this is a little confusing, so I'll try to make it as sort of simple as possible. So last April, the school district notified us, as they do every year and as they should do, of our capital assessment, which covered not items that were debt excluded and not their operating expense, but just capital items that needed attention during the fiscal year. So I believe that the amount was somewhere in the neighborhood of $775,000. as part of that was a project that we funded, that the council funded through our town's annual capital appropriation process. And that project, the money for that project was the track, right, Lori? The track. So there was some confusion about which money was going to go to tennis courts, and I think then there was a little bit of some citizen complaints that no, the track needed to be funded first. So the school decided to switch over to fund the track. So when the town council finally voted an appropriation, it was voted to fund the track with a bunch of other town items. So it turned out that right about the same time, the school was making a decision that instead of using the capital assessment from the towns for the track, that it made more sense to use those appropriations for the IT needs that the school had presumably during COVID and in that time period, where it was an opportune time to do some of the things that they wanted to do. So unfortunately, since the council had very specifically in their order funded the track, we decided that in order to make it very clean, we would ask the school to send us the money back that we had given them for the track, that they then didn't need for the track, and that we would instead do a new order and fund the IT needs that they had with something roughly equivalent to what they had sent us back in terms of the money that we had appropriated for the track. So what you see in front of you is by agreement with the district, and I do give the district a lot of credit because from a purely legal perspective, they probably didn't need to do this, but they wanted to fix, our issue. They also, I think, wanted to fix, some of their internal communications with us so that we could have a better working relationship. So we asked them to send the money back. They sent the money back, and now we are asking to appropriate that money as it was spent by the district. So that is essentially what you see in front of you. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're trying to be, I guess the bottom line is we're trying to be, overly transparent here to the point where it might be too confusing. But we want to make sure that it's clear in our books that we voted for something that we didn't get. We got the money back, and now we're voting for something that we did get. And I think it keeps our books clean. It keeps the school's books clean, and just makes things the way they should be. We've learned a couple of lessons through this process. One is when the school submits a capital assessment to us, we will do that as a separate order. And the schools don't, they can tell us what they're going to be spending on certain things, but right now they don't have to, they never have to spend the money exactly as they tell us. But I think we'll get to a much better process, once we clean up this particular messy piece. So.
Mike, can I interrupt 1 second? Mike Dolan
Sure.
is actually trying to be let in, and I don't know
Oh,
if
he
anybody
is.
wants to,
Yeah.
if you allow him, he might be able to shed some light on this if anybody has any I don't know how to do it point of order wise, but okay, thank
No,
you.
it's fine. I apologize. While I was talking, he was sitting there. So.
No, I know.
All right,
No,
I thought your question was rhetorical, Julie.
What's that question?
So, all right, yeah, what do we have to do here, Mr. Dutton, if we want him?
I think
Can we just have, since we're outside the public comment area,
Well,
No,
I
I
don't even
think-
know if he has to comment. I just wanted to let you know that,
he's here. I mean, if we're looking for the expertise, we can certainly look to him, right?
exactly. Yep,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, so, I just so people know, Mr. Dolan joined us. He's on the school committee. I thought you just gave a very succinct and very clear answer, description of what's going on here, Mr. Dutton. And this is the exact same amount. I remember we had this conversation about the track over a year ago, I believe, or a year ago, or somewhere in that time period. So, and this is the exact same amount that was recommended that evening and then passed. Okay, thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. Do we need the motion made before I can ask the questions?
What motion? You can ask
I
a
don't know, the
question.
motion to accept this order to fund it to the IT instead of the track. Like, is that what we're looking for?
No, we're asking questions right now, getting clarification, Julie, so.
Okay, great. So my question is the track paid for? And if so, you know, was that from the other funds, like you said? And if, is this IT, is this the end of this? Is this the full bill or will there be more?
So that's a good question, might be a better one for Mike Dolan, but I believe I'll take a stab at it. The track, I believe, was actually funded through other funds. I don't know if that, you know, there was so much grant funding being thrown around during this year that I can't remember if it was through ARPA CARES or if it was E&D that had been saved or if it was a capital stabilization. This is part of the school's comprehensive capital IT plan. And so this would complete this year's funding for that IT plan, Julie. So that's, yes, that would be the end
Thank
of
you.
it. Yep.
Good question. Thank you, Julie. Anybody else? Seems to be pretty straightforward. It was already appropriated, really.
Motion to
anybody
accept,
else? Okay,
Chris.
thank you, Chris.
Second.
Second, that was MJ, I believe.
Yep.
Mr. Dunn, if you could do us the
All right,
thanks courtesy.
Julie,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and Eric.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Moving on, proposed ordinance, FY 23-007, acceptance of Google tax option, retail marijuana tax. Just real quick, a comment, you know, this can kind of be a hot button issue a little bit. I'd ask people to put their personal thoughts on this subject. And remember that we have the finance committee, and we should be discussing, you know, impact on town finances. And second, Mr. Dutton, didn't we already go through this motion before?
I believe we did do something similar, and I think Counselor Wood, who's here tonight, decided at the time to withdraw it, if I'm not mistaken. And so we withdrew it at his request, and now it's back. Obviously, the election happened, so it's probably more likely than not that we'll have some level of retail sales in Bridgewater, and I think Mr. Wood's intent would be to make sure that we capture as much revenue as the state legislature allows us to capture.
All right, so after this committee had made a recommendation for approval, wasn't unanimous, Julie, it then stopped from after that. So what happened? The town council never took any action on it?
Did you say it was unanimous? Because I thought it was
No,
not.
no, I just said it was not unanimous, Julie.
Okay, I missed the word not. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually withdrew it at the council level because it was certain not to pass at the time, and failure takes the time to recover. So since we didn't have retail taxes at that point, there wasn't a necessity to do this. But Nate, if you can give me a couple minutes, I can explain what the
Sure.
measure is now.
Yes, go right ahead, Councilor.
All right, thanks. You're correct, in good memory. I actually pretty much copied this from last year's ordinance. So Chapter 64N of the Mass General Laws is the town has to accept that provision before they can apply local tax to retail marijuana. And as everybody should be aware at this point, on January 7th, the town voted in a townwide election to allow an exception to our ban, which will allow the medical to go for retail licenses. Don't know if it'll be 1 or 2 or 0, but in any case, my standing point for a while now has been it's all about the taxes, and here we are. So the state law allows you to tax up to 3% of the total sales received by the marijuana retailer as consideration for the sale. Most towns, if you look across the towns that, and I think it's like 140, 190 stores or thereabouts now, most towns set it at the top rate to take advantage of that. And so that's what I've done here. It is pretty much a photocopy of last year's effort. And just so you know, we met before this meeting as a Budget and Finance Committee and unanimously recommended approval of this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wood. You know, we did go through these motions last time with this. I don't think everybody here was on the committee though at that time. We had that discussion. So I would like to open up. We have Mr. Wood here. We got Mr. Dutton. Questions, comments?
My comment is I don't have a problem at this point. I was one of the opposed the last time because I didn't think we needed it until it was voted on. And now that it's won by 54 votes, obviously I want to benefit from the tax revenue. However, I would also like to know what, as a finance committee, as you pointed out, Nate, it's about the money. So I'd also like to see or ask, when will we know what the, how often will we see how much revenue it actually generates, and also the costs associated with it, such as, I don't know, maybe police and safety and things like that to offset that revenue.
Yeah, so
Quarterly
if I can,
reports. Or,
Nate, I'll take that in the form of a question and I can answer that if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Yeah,
great, thank you.
So Julie, so here's where the crystal ball comes into play. So we aren't forcing the 2 medical places to convert to retail. That's their option. It may take a while. We may see revenue this year. We may not see any revenue. It's market driven, just like the food tax and the hotel tax that we also have in addition to like the excise tax and real estate tax. So determining how much and when that'll flow is, I based my estimates off of statewide numbers that came out of the Cannabis Commission last year. They have a ton of data. And so the estimates I was publishing were based on that. If both went and if both were successful and same store sales held up, you know, we might see $500,000 or thereabouts.
Right, but it was also one of the selling points of voting yes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
So-
can't we have a monthly or quarterly report on if that's
Oh,
actually come to
Oh, yeah,
fruition?
absolutely. We, you know, once they start, they're in the process of, you know, making the applications now and working with Michael on the host agreement. But yeah, we should absolutely see what those numbers are. Just like you look at Lori's, monthly reports on all the other figures. So it should pop in there. And so this simply sets the tax rate. It doesn't judge how much goes into the general fund or how much to expect or anything else. It's just a simple, cash register multiplication effort.
So we'll only know how much we've gained, but we'll never know how much it cost us on the other
Okay,
end,
yeah.
related
Sure.
expenses.
So that also became a confusion during the course of the many discussions. So if you recall, there's also a mitigation component, which is in our 2 host agreements today. So I think you were on the finance committee last year when we worked on the budget last year. So the year before that, it was actually $300,000 and we dropped it down to $200,000. Statewide, there's been 3 important changes. One is over the summer, and it was during August, Governor Baker signed a new law that basically states that after 8 years with the same shop in the same location, you will not be able to charge impact fees. So we'll call them impact fees to separate them from taxes. So impact fees are driven by what the community thinks is needed by the community as a mitigation against the presence of marijuana. there's a lot of discussion about, is that different than liquor? Is it different than, street marijuana, that sort of thing. But currently, we're in this year's budget. We are expecting $200,000, and we based our expenses in this year's fiscal budget on that $200,000 as revenue. So by formula, and you've listened to Lori and Tony talk about this before, by formula, about half of that goes to the school district and half stays in the town. And so Michael has the two medical places. One actually asked for a report from Michael of what the impact fees were being used for. So that's the other piece at the state level. There is no designation about what you use the impact fees for. You can use it for education, you can use it for police officers, you could use it for trimming the trees on the common, which has nothing to do with marijuana, But the statement from the town to ACS in particular, and it's all public documentation, all the impact letters that communities give to their medical and retail are public information. There's like a handful of incidents that refer to lockout of a customer from his car, a gate was closed. There was a small fire related to something else where the fire department had to show up. An alarm went off, that sort of thing. So there's no direct cost allocated to the use of the product, like there isn't a direct allocation in the use of other products like alcohol. So right now we have 200,000. Next year we may have 200,000. It might be less. My expectation, if I can give an opinion here, is my expectation is that 200,000 will slowly dissolve away from our budget process, because you can't show that there's real impact from these stores, direct impact, which is why it was set up that way. And it will be replaced by retail taxes on the budget process.
Mr. Wood, real quick, or even Mr. Dutton, would this be this 3% tax revenue stream? Would this be something that we're also sharing with the regional school system?
So Nate, you're jumping the gun. That's in the next item.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
through you to Counselor Wood, I wanted to ask a few questions.
go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Counselor Wood, first, thank you for coming to the meeting tonight and helping us better understand this issue. I appreciate your expertise on the matter and the legislation before us. A couple of questions. First, I know the state allows for a maximum of 3%. We are asking for the full 3% rate first, right?
Right.
Okay. Has it been your experience in your research that it's prudent to start low and then work our way up?
No, so there's multiple markets at play here. So the legal market, which is the one that we're going to tax, has a customer base, and the customer base is there because they want to deal with a lab tested product that is of a quality that doesn't have things like fentanyl and other pieces, and they know is coming from a reputable store. So that's taxable. I don't think you can really draw people into a store by reducing that, because the state is also applying a 17% tax as well. So you have the cost, then you have a 17% tax, which is broken down into two components: a 6.25% sales tax and an excise tax of 10.25, I think 10.75. And then on top of that is the local option to tax. So that MJ, that's a great question. I don't think there's any real market research that shows that you improve or turn away customers because you've selected a 2% versus 3% option, and that's why I think it's prudent to go for the maximum.
That was a good question, MJ.
I do have a follow-up, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
go ahead.
Counselor Wood, more of a concern that it's not so much regarding the customer base. I guess my concern is that I'm looking at it from more of the business perspective of it for the two businesses because there are the two dispensaries. Is there any impact on their business with this rate being a certain level? Or is that's more on the state side of things where they have to eventually pay the state the sales tax and the excise tax that they're getting from the customer? I'm just more concerned about affecting these businesses in a way where they may be like, well, it's not, it's not from a business perspective beneficial for us to operate in the town and possibly in that regard.
No, that's a good question. So here's the balance of why it was, in my mind, important to allow a store that already sells a marijuana product to sell almost identical product. In many cases, the overlap is like 90%, but to have a cash register on their counter that does taxes. So in the medical side of things, you have to have a medical marijuana card, MMJ card, and that requires a fee. Usually there's a doctor's fee associated and an annual fee to the state. It runs about, I think about $120 now. So it's not difficult to get that card and you can go to the store. But if your consumption is very low, if you're just, a weekend, you like an edible with your football game or something like that, that fee is really high compared to a lower cost of the additional taxes. So the product cost itself is identical. But on the MMJ side, you're paying this $120 annual fee. On the retail side, you're paying essentially a 20% all-in tax. And if your consumption is very low, your business will be driven toward retail versus the medical side. And that's what's happening statewide, is that a lot of people on the medical side are just converting to retail because the shops have popped up all over. Does that answer your question?
Yep, that answers my question, Counselor. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, no more questions from me.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question.
Yeah, Rick.
Mr. Wood, I guess it's a question and sort of a statement, I guess. I would imagine that, although towns are charging the maximum as well, right? Like they're not, based on your research, what could you just maybe speak to what you've seen other towns, how they set their taxes? Did they start off at the max, or are they gradually increasing?
Yeah, so let's take a look at Halifax. I recall back when Halifax was ES Town, obviously adjacent to Bridgewater, and they zoned right away for retail. But it wasn't until very recently that they actually opened up store Flower and Soul, which is it's about a third of a mile past Nick and Angelo's on 106. So literally on the edge of Bridgewater. Their tax rate, as I recall in the beginning, was 2%, but they definitely charged 3%. I can show you a friend's receipt. And so they're at 3%. As far as I know, Panacea down in Middleborough is 3%. The Brockton shops are probably 3%. And I have a friend in the industry in Brockton, and that generates a lot of cash for the city. So I don't think it's a deterrent to go 3% versus 2%. And I don't think anyone's really shopping for a 1% save when they're going to their local store instead of traveling a couple miles to someplace that might be, a couple dollars cheaper.
Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You Rick? Anybody else? Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Motion to approve, Nate.
Second,
All right, thank you, Eric. And I think MJ got the second.
Yep.
All right. Eric,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
aye.
Rig,
Aye.
and Julie.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on to our last order of business for the evening, FY 23-008, cash policy, retail marijuana tax reserve fund. We can start with my question, Bill, I guess.
Actually, can I ask Lori a question since she's here? And I think it's an important question for the committee here. So if you don't mind, one question.
Sure.
Lori, I just looked at the cherry sheet for Bridgewater. I don't see an MBTA fee. I recall that our host fee used to be like in the neighborhood of $200,000, but I'm not sure where that's applied. Do you know where that's applied? And maybe
The
it's not there
assessment or
anymore.
the revenue?
Yeah, the assessment.
I can take a look at it.
Well,
I
while
know they-
you're
Yeah,
Yeah, while you're doing that, so the reason I ask that is because in the town, you guys are very familiar. We have really 3 state properties that we get flows in and out of. So we have BSU, which they give us a gift. You saw that a few weeks ago. But we don't tax them, obviously, and there's really no fees assigned to them because of the Constitution. Then we have the prison, which you asked great questions during your session on the prison mitigation, because that's fluctuated wildly over the 10 years that I've seen it. There have been years where it was 0, there was years where it was 300. That's a lot of that is the whim of the folks up in Boston. In good years, we see money. In bad years, that's one of the first things that gets cut down a little bit. But the other piece is the MBTA, and as I recall, we actually pay out to the state on that piece of property because we host it and they feel there's an economic gain. And so there's these trade-offs. We get money from the prison, but we pay out to the MBTA. And I just wanted to know how much different that was. But Laura, you can do that research separately. I won't take up.
yeah, well, I'm just looking at it now, so the
Yeah.
estimate for this fiscal year that is assessed to the town, meaning it does come off of the monthly cherry sheets, is 183,000.
Right. So we get in 190 for the prison. We give out 183 for the MBTA.
Right.
So
Go Washington.
it's like a net 0. We should just ask them to give us the tea for free and forget about the prison, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so back to this 008. So there's 2 pieces to this, and Michael, I think it would be fair at some point if you share the email that you sent me. There's 2 pieces to this. One piece is at some point we'll have tax revenues coming in, and as Tony explained in his email that you should get a copy of, he explains that just by default should go into the general fund. So that would become part of our revenue estimates, just like the excise tax, the meals tax, the building permits, real estate tax, etc. But you can, and I've seen other towns do this, you can segregate those funds into a reserve account and then use that reserve account similar to what you might do with an impact account or as a special projects account. So during the course of the ballot question, I talked with a lot of people and they said, well, we want to see this money, used toward the Oak Street Bridge, or we want to see this money used for, a dog park, or we want to see this money used for drug education, which I think is, all 3 are probably really good ideas. And I don't know that we specifically have any items set up for like drug education and that sort of thing. Or if there's some other impacts that folks are worried about. By setting up this reserve fund, you would then put it into the decision of the council. And because of the process, that decision would also come through the finance committee for recommendation. And so by taking the funds that come in the tax, and we said earlier, those may fluctuate. Those could fluctuate based on how many convert, how many, the competition level, the amount of sales, the price of the product, etc. We could redirect those taxes into reserve fund and then use them later instead of applying them directly to the special fund, to the general fund. Now, we did this with the general fund stabilization. So each year we'd go through and we'd say, well, we're going to reserve as part of the resolution process, we'd say, well, 1% or 1.5%. And then that would, by its nature, create free cash. But also in the budget process, we'd say, okay, we're going to allocate $100,000 to the general fund stabilization to start building up that account. And we would do something similar here. This measure before us tonight simply sets up the account. It doesn't actually put any money into the account. It simply establishes the account for use later. The second piece to this is would have to be another measure that would then say, okay, we're going to fund this reserve account with specific amounts or percentages or allocation. So this just establishes the account. It doesn't actually add any money to it or promise any money to it. The account balance would stay at zero until there was a second action taken. So this is just a preparation step if the council wants to take that extra step during the budget process and actually pass the money. I recommend it for it, and the reason I sponsored it is because those, unlike excise tax, where Tony and Lori have this fantastic study of where those are going, we really have no idea where the marijuana taxes are going. We don't know. I can predict that it's going to be 500,000, but that was predicated by two shops shifting. What if one doesn't? What if what if the market value goes down? What if there's so many ifs there that I think to level set the general fund budget process, to me it makes sense to segregate these taxes and put them someplace else, and then use them like capital or in some operational fashion or educational fashion. And it could be a place where the school makes a request for, some educational program on drugs or something like that. So that's the idea behind this one.
This is essentially just setting up the fund. So once, if we happen to have the revenue start coming in, we have the fund to deposit it into.
Right. And just to reiterate, that doesn't automatically happen. That has to be a separate action by the council.
Separate, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions, comments, thoughts?
I just have a statement.
Yeah,
I like the idea of segregating the funds, just so that we can actually, analyze it and not have it mixed in with other funds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Good point. Anybody else? Any question?
Building on Riggs's comment there, it's a really good idea to have this type of thing in place simply because of the fact that the funds can be used in any manner of usage, whether they can be used for school, or they could be used by public safety, or some other type of means of service that is even tangentially related to the sale of marijuana. From an auditing perspective, this is a great idea to have it in place because we'll be able to track it. We'll be able to see what goes in, what goes out. The account will be specifically purposed for specific use, if I'm understanding that correct, for you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilor Wood. And it's definitely the right thing to do because we want to make sure we're getting the revenue, but we're also tracking the revenue and knowing where it's going to go at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you, MJ. Good point. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, real quick, just if, and maybe I'm interpreting wrong, but as I read it, there was a 25% mention. And so we're saying we're going to put at least 25% in there. Is that the correct understanding? And I guess my question is more, where does the other 75% go for now?
So that's a great question, but again, it would be helpful to have Tony's email in front of us. This is actually language that he provided me based on his analysis when I asked him if we could separate the money and track it in a separate fund. So this is, I believe, based on state language as well. And so when you're allocating, it says, percentage not less than 25%. So he was pretty clear that, it wouldn't automatically just go.
I can see in the order here, actually, on Mr. Wood, that it says further appropriation. It says of all or a percentage not less than 25%.
The screen share that Michael has up is the letter I referred to, email I referred to.
So yeah, that's just the DOR's interpretation of the existing law requires that at least 25% is going to have to go into this. If you create a stabilization fund, at least 25% of that is going to have to be voted each year. It can be 100%, but it can't be less than 25%.
Okay, that makes more
That
sense.
makes sense. Got it. Yep. Appreciate it.
Good question, Eric. Yeah, I saw it too. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'd like to make the motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, MJ. Do we have a second? Second from Greg?
All right, Eric,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
and Julie.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Next is old business. I don't see that we have any here. We can move on real quickly to additional items of discussion. The chair would like to bring up something real quick. I had mentioned this at an early meeting. My oldest son is a senior. He plays for his high school varsity hockey team. It's actually the team that just lost that young athlete last weekend, and they happen to play all their games on Wednesday evenings. So obviously, and he's the goalie. So obviously, my priority until about mid-March is going to be to watch my son playing his final year of high school hockey, especially given the circumstances. So I guess it's just going to limit my availability in the short term. So I just want to make the committee aware of it. I don't know if there's a possibility we want to think about Mondays temporarily. You know, we have 7 out of 9 members. I just want to throw it out there.
Nate, I'll start and everybody else can weigh in, but Wednesdays have been a challenge for me. I think you've known that. So Mondays are actually better. So if it's better for the rest of the committee, I'm all for Mondays. And if we keep it Wednesday, I'll try to make as many as I can.
I'll second the Monday meeting. From the beginning, I wanted Mondays, but when we went for Wednesdays, I was the one that pushed them out till 7 because Wednesdays weren't my first choice. So I don't have a problem with Mondays.
You know,
All right, less problems with Mondays. Like even this meeting, like Nate said, I plan on Wednesdays, so I made plans for tonight, but then I changed them but I wouldn't have made them if I knew that we had the meetings on Mondays originally.
This is Rig. I would also agree for Mondays.
all right, one thing that, because, I know that the budget subcommittee, the town council's budget subcommittee also would be meeting on pretty much the same Monday. It really doesn't make so much difference because Josh will be back. So we wouldn't have to worry about sharing secretaries or anything. I think that we'd probably want to meet maybe a little bit later at 7:30. Correct? What time does the budget subcommittee start? 6?
So tonight we start at 6:30. We had been meeting before Tuesday, but as everyone's aware, we're soon to enter into budget season. I think it makes sense to have meetings, and Monday probably works best for most of the budget finance committee.
Yeah, it's true, the budget. So if we did Mondays at 7, meet at 7:30, a little bit later, does that make sense? That we're trending?
In my opinion, for me at least, it works as long as I have notice. I usually have an appointment that I have a standing appointment I usually keep on Monday nights around 6 to 7. So as long as we're like 7:15, 7:30, I can usually jump on pretty quickly and get my connection. So it works. So as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Chairman, however we want to do this, I'm flexible. And if it happens that we had to do it on a Tuesday, I could certainly meet on a Tuesday too.
MJ, you'll probably be on before me. with my record.
So
I usually am, Julie.
Exactly.
It sounds like we'd want to push it up a half hour to 7:30 then, from what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
So I'll just say Wednesdays are particularly difficult for me as well. Have basketball. Mondays, if it happens to be on a Monday on or before the full moon, I likely wouldn't be able to make it, but I don't know how often that would
Okay.
at the same time. So
You keep us posted on.
It certainly sounds like Monday works a works. We gotta do it a little bit later, for everybody. So obviously the chair can't make a motion, so.
I'd like to make a motion to change the meetings to Monday nights at
At
I'll
7:30.
second it.
At 7:30?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have a first and a second on that, Julie, and then MJ?
Yep.
If I, can
Okay.
I just make a suggestion?
Sure.
I definitely think it's appropriate to make.
Oh, wait, what about Tony, right?
Oh, yeah, Tony.
Well,
Well, we got Lori too.
Laura,
Sorry,
Josh will be back, but I would suggest, one thing I would suggest is just
Yep.
designate the evening. And then, you know, it sounds like everybody's time is sort of jumping all over, so you may not want to necessarily vote the time right now, but at least identify the evening, and then as we go along, you can identify the time a little bit better.
No, and that, I get that. That's not a bad suggestion. Josh is due back, what, the end of the month, right? Yeah, February?
Sooner the better.
All right, so I guess we can leave a timeout. I get that.
Yeah,
point.
we'll just say Monday.
Okay. So we have a first from Julie, a second from MJ.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, Eric,
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
and Julie.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. You know, we went a little, this was an hour and a half tonight. It was a little longer, one of our meetings, but you know, I think we had some great discussions. And we had some very smart questions on all the topics that we covered this evening, and we do jump around quite a bit.
I just have a question. We also have the joint meeting on the 7th. That's a Tuesday, right?
Correct. Correct, that's
So,
a,
so our next meeting, just looking real quick too, thank you about dates, Julie, you're always good about that. So if the town council is meeting next when?
tomorrow. And then after that, I believe it's February
This is-
7th.
Yeah, the 7th.
All right, so maybe, so would we want to do it next Monday? Would we want to do it the 30th, right?
Is
that make
there a
sense?
town council meeting tomorrow? Like, will we have
Yep.
anything new, I guess is the question.
Yeah, right. Will we have anything?
It happens to be one of those Mondays, so I will not be able to attend.
Let's see, give me a second.
'Cause I'd rather not meet the Monday before the town council meeting in case we have to maneuver a little bit, you know?
You won't have, I mean, you'll have a few items, but nothing that, I don't think there's anything that requires immediate action.
Okay, so we can tentatively plan on a meeting. We have to get the notice out here, so too. Let's plan on the 30th, everybody, okay? Just one thing, if you know, I hate it when stuff piles up too, if we miss a meeting. Then all of a sudden we have a meeting with, 20 items on it. And if there's nothing important and we have to push to the next one, we can. That makes sense?
That works, Nate.
Okay, so let's plan on the 30th. Who would we let know right now? Debbie still?
Yes, that'd be great, Nate. Just let Debbie know.
Okay, and I'll CC Josh, let him know we changed it.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you, everyone. That sounds great. You know, we're down to our final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank
Second.
you.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, Julie,
Aye.
Rig,
Aye.
MJ,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and Eric.
Aye.
You are adjourned. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank
thank you,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone. Thank you.
Good night.